All right, welcome everyone. Today is July 16, 2020. This is the meeting of the Kubernetes Storage Special Interest Group. As a reminder, this meeting is public, recorded, and posted on YouTube. Today on the agenda, we're going to go over the 1.19 planning spreadsheet. We've already had code freeze for this release. Next up, there is the docs freeze, which is going to be the end of this week. Actually, it'll be today. And then the next milestone is the 1.19 release, which is going to happen on the 25th. And so today we kind of want to get a status of what made it into the release and what did not. So let's go ahead and switch over to the spreadsheet. After that, we'll come back to the remaining items on the agenda. If there's anything that you want to discuss, feel free to add it to the agenda, and we'll get to it after the planning session. So jumping directly into the planning session, first item is CSI online-offline volume online-offline volume expansion. Hemant, are you on the line? Anyone on the line able to give an update on volume expansion for us?
I think he had a couple of PRs that didn't make it into 119, and he will continue in 120.
I think the one that detect the offline volume expansion, that one is merged. So if it's offline detected, and then if a driver reports the field precondition, stop retrying, that one is merged.
There's another one for expanding volumes that are in use on multiple nodes, which is not merged yet, but I think will merge for 120. So we're getting there.
Thank you all for the update. Next item is recovering from resize failure. So end of quarter status, I'm going to leave that as started, and we'll carry that over to the 120 release. So next item is recovering from resize failure. I guess that's related to the previous item.
Yeah, that's the same status. We had API.
Did not make it.
Sorry, say that again.
Didn't make it. This one, because there was some API, there maybe some API changes, because there's one field that is right now in the spec. There's some comments from API reviewers. Maybe that should be in the status. I think so. That's why I didn't make it. We got the comments very late.
Okay. Next item is the storage proxy for Windows. Anyone know what the current status of that is? I don't think we've been able to get a status update from folks in a little while.
Yeah, I see updates going or PRs going on in the repo. So I think they are trying to target a beta release in a month or so.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Seems like that's going to carry over as well. Next item is snapshot fix issues.
So we continue with the bug fixing and adding tests. I think there's one E3 text fix that got merged. And we cut a 2.2 RC1 release. We're waiting for a change to move the API to a separate package. Once that one is in, we can cut a formal 2.2 release.
Okay. That looks like it's on track. Next item is non-recursive volume ownership, FS group.
Yeah, so we were targeting this for beta, but then we.
Amant, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Let me try again. Sorry. Can you hear me now? Better?
Yes, that's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay. So we originally targeted this to go beta, but we paused the implementation so that we can consider SLNX as well. But the SLNX cap did not get implemented in 119, and because of concerns raised by Clayton and things. So now in 120, we are going to make some changes, and I think it will remain in alpha in 120 because we are going to. The plan is to add a field to PVC status to track the last FS group that was used, rather than the old plan of like checking the top level directory for the FS group. If the top level directory has, so this will make sure that we can default to a behavior that works for all users, and it's faster. For SLNX, I think Jan will give another update, but SLNX will require no change. So we have kind of have a plan to solve this now in a better way. So yeah.
Okay. Sounds like good progress.
And I think I missed for like resizing. I just joined a little bit late.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So we made a lot of progress. I think I'll try to schedule a call next week what progress we made, but we didn't get two changes didn't get in. One was the recovery from expansion failure, which is blocked on API approvers. It's still a bit up in the air whether the new field should allocated resources should go to status or spec. I hope to get clarity on this from Jordan and Tim. And then the read write many. I made a PR, but it needs a little bit work to get it merged. So we should, but that's not a blocking thing. The other one is, but we did fix a lot of long-standing issues. So
cool.
yeah.
So it sounds like we're going to be moving these items to 120, but a lot of progress has been made. Hopefully we'll be able to wrap it up in 120.
Yes, and I was wondering, and this is again, we'll discuss in a follow-up call, that is it okay if we accept recovery from resize failure, which will take its own time to go from alpha beta phase? Can we consider moving rest of the resize feature GA and fix all of them in 120? That's an action item I want to consider for a follow-up call next week.
Okay. Cool. I think we can discuss it on that call.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Aman. Next item is SE Linux recursive permission handling. Is that part of the previous item?
Oh, sort of. Like I had enhancement and some implementation, and it was rejected, and we have to redesign in 120.
Okay. So we'll consider that started, and we'll go ahead and move that to 120 as well. Next item is file permission handling for Windows. I don't think this got any, this never got started. We'll go ahead and move it and see if we have anybody to take ownership of it for 120. Next item is file permission handling and projected service accounts. That's complete. Next item is CSI entry read-only handling. I don't think this got started. Humble, are you on the line by any chance? So we'll carry that over to 120. Next item is issues related to assuming volumes or mount points. Andy was assigned to this. Let's see. Michelle, would you happen to have any updates here?
Yeah, so there's actually quite a few different PRs fixing various different issues. And some of them merged and some of them didn't. So I think specifically Andy's PR, we decided to hold it until 120 because it has the potential to break some drivers. So instead, I think we just need to, I think we already sent a deprecation notice in maybe 118, but I think we can send another, now that we have the CSI announced mailing list, we can potentially send another announcement and say that this change is coming at 120.
Good. Okay. We'll carry that over to 120 as well. Next item is storage capacity tracking. That was a fun one. Anybody want to give an update on that?
That one got merged.
Cool. And so that's officially alpha.
Oh,
Well, it's still pending the external provisioner changes, but the Kubernetes side has merged.
Yeah. And I'm not sure of documentation now that Patrick is on PTO, but I guess it's getting.
We'll help it merge.
Okay. So docs in progress, external provisioner changes pending, and the core Kubernetes changes are merged. Do the external provisioner changes look like they're on track to complete by code or by release date?
Hope so. The release date is about a month and a half from now, so we have some time.
Cool. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and preliminarily mark that as done. And hopefully we can move it to beta in the next couple of releases. All right, next item is PVC inline ephemeral volumes. That was also merged as far as I can remember. Are there any sidecar changes for that? Okay. I'm going to mark that one as done too. Next item is spreading over failure domains. This was a design for this quarter. Last status update was this in progress. Shin, do you want to give an update here?
Yeah, no update yet because I think that I was trying to figure out the first part of the working group design, how to support the group snapshots first. So we do have this in that cap. And I also have some draft in a Google Doc, but have not added that. So I think it's ongoing.
So that's in progress, and we're going to go ahead and move that to 120. And volume group API seems like similar.
Yeah, so we had a design meeting, and I think I added item at the end of the meeting agenda just to say that we are planning to drop the support for immutable volume group from the cap and see if there are any objections on that.
And so then we'll just shift it over to 20 to wrap up. Okay, next item is CSI out of tree, moving manifest driver, that was completed. Moving the iSCSI driver. Last status was we needed to follow up with the devs. We build release images. Any updates on that from anyone?
I have not had a chance to look at this.
Okay. Get that moved to 120. Fiber channel and flex, I assume we weren't able to follow up on those.
I have not deprecated yet. I think it's just a matter of actually just getting the GitHub admins to archive the repo. I mean, technically it shouldn't take too long. I can try to get that moving.
Okay. Preliminarily, we'll mark it as something we'll track in 120, and then if it gets completed quickly, that'll be an easy, quickly marked green in 120 release. All right, next item is moving the Gluster FS provisioner out of the deprecated repo. Initial PR was merged, not complete yet was the last status. Any updates on this from anyone? Okay, I'm going to assume this is in progress but not yet complete, so we'll carry that over to 120. NFS provisioner, Karen reached out to me offline. He says, thanks to Jan, the NFS provisioner is merged. The NFS client, I still have a few to-do items to work on. Infra team has been following up on the closure of the repo. Current plan is to get the task completed by end of this month. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it open, and we can carry it over to 120 if we need to. If not, we'll go ahead and mark it as complete as soon as it's done. And so this status applies to both NFS provisioner as well as NFS client provisioner. Next item is deprecation of external storage repo. This is going to depend on the above items being completed. NFS is in progress. Gluster is a little bit behind. So once those items are completed, then we can go ahead and deprecate that repo. And again, this is a call out to anyone on this call who uses anything from that repo, the external storage repo. The plan is to deprecate that repo and archive it. If there's anything in there that you use or that you care about, please make sure that there is an effort to get that moved to a Kubernetes SIG official repo. So far, we've identified the NFS provisioner, Gluster FS, and the core external provisioner logic, and all of that has already been moved or is in progress. If there's anything else that you need in that repo, please raise the flag as soon as possible, otherwise it will go away. Next item is volume snapshot namespace transfer.
Yeah, no updates, unfortunately. Hopefully I'll have better luck in 120.
Okay, no worries. We'll get that moved over to 120. Next item is CSI volume health.
Yeah, so the controller and the agent side changes are merged, and morgue driver changes merged. We are now working on the adding unit tests.
Cool. Is this still on track for 119, or do we want to move it over? Okay.
Oh, yeah, 119 should be fine.
Okay. And should we preliminarily mark it as done, or hold off until the next meeting?
I think, yeah, I think should be fine. Yeah, we can wait.
Okay. Sounds good. Next item is the object storage API, which is being called the COSI, Container Object Storage Interface. And so a few updates here. Jeff wasn't able to attend the meeting today, but he sent me notes offline. John, who is leading this effort, is going to be moving to another project and won't be leading the KEP any longer. Sid is going to be taking over leadership for this KEP. Jeff and Aaron are going to be responsible for the administrative aspect of the KEP, running the meetings, resolving necessary conditions required for getting it merged, communications. And Rob is committed to ongoing coding. He's currently working on the sidecar. they are in need of help on this project. So if you are at all interested in object storage, please reach out to me or Jeff or Sid or any of the SIG leads, John, Michelle, Xing, and we can put you in touch. This project really needs help. I think they're getting a lot of momentum. It's unfortunate that John had to leave the project, so they're probably a little bit understaffed. So if there's anybody that's interested in helping with this, please reach out and we'll put you in touch. Next item is CSI Ephemeral Volumes Beta, which is the existing API, and we just wanted to fix some bugs here. Any updates on this?
I'm not sure any bugs were fixed.
Okay. So let's say no updates, move to 0. Okay. Next item is FS group support in CSI.
Yes, this finally made it out of tide testing during the course of this call. So it was merged about 15 minutes ago.
Ooh, nice. And is there any remaining work, or can we mark this as complete?
I believe it's completed. The docs PRs are open and have been preliminarily reviewed.
Perfect. All right, I'll go ahead and mark that as complete then. Okay, next item is vSphere CSI migration. Vivian, do you want to give an update here if you're on the line?
Debian seems to be not online. So I can give an update. Yeah,
Sure.
so it is merged, so you made it into beta. And the doc PR also merged yesterday. So now we still need to figure out the next steps. That is how we need to come up with a deprecation message. How to handle the cases when the vSphere version is lower than 7v1. So for the deprecation, does it, if it's for Kubernetes, normally does it require like 2 releases before, when you say we're deprecating, let's say in 1.19, if we say we want to deprecate, then does it take 2 releases for that to really happen?
Changing, it depends on what is being deprecated. In this case, we would be deprecating behavior, I think, which is 1 year.
Oh, 1 year. Okay. So that means the GA would be need to wait for 1 year until we declare GA. Is that?
I think this is what we need to discuss, whether or not we can turn on things but make it able to turn off within the deprecation period. I think to me it's a little unclear if the deprecation period refers to changing the default or just completely removing the behavior. So I think that's something we need to sort out, and that will help us figure out exactly like the timelines that we can achieve this.
Okay.
If we are going to SIG ARC for this one, I think for guidance maybe, then that
Is it
might be
SIG
more
ARC or is it
important.
a SIG cloud provider? Which one is it?
I was just thinking that, and I might be wrong, but this is big enough change that basically like the whole removing the cloud provider and supporting the entry is basically not going to help any of existing customers. The only reason we are doing it is so that the API remains the same. But basically at that point, all the users should be encouraged to use CSI types in their PVs, because otherwise they won't get new features. So any of existing customers clusters cannot use this and they cannot upgrade. So it's It's essentially we're just checking up a checkbox, it feels to me, by supporting this migration. And it's big enough topic that maybe we should consider what should be the deprecation cycle for this one, and talk to SIG for guidance. I mean, that's just my
So
thought.
how about we do an internal meeting within this SIG as a next step? And then based on that, if kind of we have unresolved major questions after that meeting, we can consider looping in other SIGs.
Yeah, and
Is
also
that okay?
I'm planning on meeting with SIG cloud provider to also sync up timelines, because we have two sort of parallel tracks of work going on. So SIG cloud provider has their own stuff. So I think coordinating with them on their status and will also help with our timelines too. At least from what I know so far, I think they are already going to slip the 1.21 target. So I think that gives us a little more breathing room, and we don't necessarily need to try to rush this so much and make such big changes quickly.
Is there any driver ready for GA in 1.20? Or none of them you think are ready?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
All right, so sounds like next steps there. We're gonna have some meetings offline to discuss the next steps, and then we'll loop in the right folks as needed. So that is ongoing, but I mean, the beta is complete, so I'm gonna go ahead and mark that as done. I think the road to GA is going to be more work. Next up is the Azure CSI migration. Andy, are you on the line?
Andy's probably sleeping, but I can give an update. Azure Disk moved to beta. Azure file is remaining alpha. I think mainly there is some bug fix pending in external provisioner needed for Azure file. And I think Andy is still working on getting the CI set up for it. But I think Azure file should be able to go to beta next release. It's very close.
Okay. So, sorry, go ahead, Aman.
The FS Azure file depends on FS group support at mount time. I don't know if you want to sort this out, because right now when I was we were looking at the code, it was marked as a to-do item. So can it go beta without that? I was just, because
I mean, I think we can go beta with some known issues, but I think definitely something like that we need to resolve before GA.
So it sounds like it's partially complete, and what we should do for the next release is break this into two, Azure file and Azure disk, instead of a single item. So for now, we'll keep it together. We'll call it as started, and then when we copy it over to 120, we'll break it apart into multiple pieces. Next up is the AWS CSI migration. Any updates on that? Do we know if Matt started working on this?
I spoke with Matt offline. He said that it's on his radar, but he doesn't, at least for Q3, he didn't, or for this release, he didn't have time to look at it, but yeah, it's on his radar to do.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and move that over to 120 as well. Next up is OpenStack CSI migration, which is Cinder only. And
yeah, I don't have an update on that.
Okay.
So
I guess we'll move that over to 120.
I think so.
Okay.
Sorry, I was a bit late joining too, by the way.
No worries. Thank you for the update. Next item is CEFFS and CEF-RBD CSI migration. Any updates? Okay, we'll go ahead and get that moved over to 120 as well. I haven't seen any progress there. Next item is SIG scalability, immutable secrets, and config maps. That was completed. Woo. Next item is with SIG apps, address issues with PVCs created by stateful set not being auto-deleted. Any updates on that?
Yeah, this is Keki here. So we have had some discussions. I have started working on a KEP with Dave and Matt and Michelle as the reviewer. And hopefully by next meeting, I should have a KEP PR out with the required updates.
So we'll go ahead and mark that as started and carry that over to 120. Next item is volume expansion for stateful sets. I guess KK, you as well.
So I was supposed to meet up with Hemant after the code freeze and kind of discuss about the decrease part of the size. So need to sync up with him. Have not had a chance yet.
That started as well. Then we have execution hook for application snapshot. This has been painful. Shing, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so we had another meeting with SIG-Node, and they still have concerns, a lot of concerns. So they asked us to look at a few more things, like look at how the workflow would work for things like send a SIG hub or changing like a log level, just different from quiescing, and also how to handle if there are too many probes, like how to limit it. So they also ask us to summarize the initial cap, which is the execution hook CRD approach. So yeah, so I have sent those information to them. Maybe should arrange another meeting and see how we can.
If we do another meeting, let's pull in Jordan as well, because I think we're kind of playing messenger between those two groups.
Oh, yeah. So I also think so. Yeah, we have not. Yeah, we don't have anyone from the security side, right? So
yeah.
Maybe, Jordan can.
And I think Jordan was the one that was pushing us to push this into kubelet, and then the Node folks are saying, no, don't put it in kubelet. So
right.
Get them into the same room and let them argue with each other.
Sure. Okay.
All right, thank you for your work on that, Shing. Next item is the Kubernetes mount library, moving that into staging. Last status was it was in progress, staging repo was created, and some PRs were in progress. Michelle, any updates on that?
Yeah, unfortunately, we missed the code freeze deadline for getting this initial PR merged. We were fighting some weird versioning and dependency things. But I think we have a decent handle on getting this merged first thing once the branch reopens again.
Awesome. All right, that's good progress. I think that actually got done faster than I thought it would. So thank you for that. That is all for status updates. Switching back to our agenda. Just as a reminder, August 25th is when the 119 release is being cut, which actually we have a considerable amount of time. Usually it's much tighter. The reason for this is because of this whole COVID thing. Instead of doing 4 Kubernetes releases in the year, we reduced it to 3. And so we have more time to get things done, which is good. Next, moving up to design reviews, we have 2 items. One is it Giannis?
Correct. Giannis, yeah.
Giannis, do you want to talk about this one?
Yes. So, yeah, basically, so I just wanted to get some feedback and just to explain a bit what the concept is about. Is it okay? Can I share my screen or
absolutely.
do you want?
Yeah, let me give you permission real quick,
Okay.
and then you should be able to do it.
So actually, there would I think I would be interested on having a contributing to the object storage API. So I joined last week's design call.
Perfect.
So
okay.
So yeah, but it's a bit related to that, or at least it can leverage our framework. This thing, okay.
Sounds
no,
good.
So
okay.
Okay,
Now you should be
I can
able to share your screen. Great.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so yeah, it's the dataset lifecycle framework. So it's a bit high level the presentation, but I'm gonna skip just to the interesting bits. So this is more or less the use case that we're trying to handle. So there is the problem of the data scientists, data engineers accessing data sets, right? And the data provider providing access to these data sets. And now while there are, the CSI work, and actually we are leveraging all that work. So under the hood, we're using CSI. But actually what we're trying to do is to bring a new definition that it's the data sets, right? So it's a custom resource definition that it is actually a pointer to remote S3 and NFS data sources. So basically what this means is that the user would declare a data set, right, and will define the type, and then under the hood, our framework would provision the PVCs and the config maps and the secrets, and it would be directly mounted into their pods. So what we are also pushing for is this bit that's called transparent data caching. And it's basically what we're trying to do there is to have a pluggable architecture for bringing caching frameworks inside that pipeline without changing the core framework, and with the ability the frameworks would implement their caching on their own, right? So we have a proof of concept for that based on Ceph and Rook, and also imagine that when you cache these data sets in your Kubernetes nodes, how beneficial would be for the scheduler to have pointers and hints about where to schedule pods that use the data sets. And of course, we are doing tests with Spark, TensorFlow, Kubeflow to make sure that it works as is. So yeah, this is the overall approach, as I said. So this is the CRD. You define the data set. You just annotate your pods like this. And then the caching plugin, if there is a caching plugin available, it makes sure that it caches the data in the cache pods. So this is a bit the flow from a different perspective. So the user defines the dataset, or the dataset provider, the dataset operator creates the corresponding PVC, and then when they go and create a pod, the admission controller mutates this pod to use the created PVC. And this is very quickly just to show how the transparent caching is working currently. So this is the core framework, right? So when the user declares a dataset with these credentials, the dataset controller probes the cluster for plugins. And if there isn't, there is this internal object, the dataset internal, which is hidden from the user, right? It's just for the components to know. And then it goes back to the dataset internal controller, which is responsible for creating all the native Kubernetes components. So CSI S3, CSI NFS that we have implemented. We have actually modified the open source implementations of those, and anything else that comes in the future. Now, when there is a caching plugin, this would be the flow. So the dataset controller is aware that there is a caching plugin available. So it delegates the creation of the dataset internal to this caching plugin. So basically what happens, the only responsibility of the caching plugin is to create a dataset internal. So we understand that this is a bit of an async process because there might need to provision some stuff, some pods, some configuration that we know we need to do in any case. But in the end, they don't have to implement the low-level creation of PVCs and so on and so forth. They just need to create a dataset internal, which is then handled again by the core framework and create the PVCs. And if you don't have any questions, I have a very, very short demo that I can show you.
Sure, yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, okay, so let's go. Okay, so just to show you what we're talking about exactly. So this is the dataset definition, right? So type COS, Cloud Object Store, the access key, the endpoint, in this case being on IBM Cloud, but we have tested with Azure, with AWS and Minion, it works. The bucket that we want to use, data ImageNet, and the region, right? So as normal kubectl, create.
What does the local mean? Is this a...
Yeah, okay, so good question. So basically, we have also started to design in mind that there would be a remote catalog as well. So that's why we have it local. The local is in the sense of the locally defined, let's say, in this cluster defined, if it makes sense. Okay, but yeah, thanks for does it make sense?
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, it's still under design, as you can imagine. So if we go and create, right? So we created this dataset, Yanis, kubectl, get dataset, and you see it here. So under the hood, right? If we inspect the secrets, right? We created a secret to keep this information about the access keys, and also the config map with the details about the bucket and the remote endpoint. And if we see also the dataset internal, you will see that also we created this one that would, in the end, provide us with a PVC. So here we have the PVC that was created as a result of this dataset. And it's this storage class because our orchestrator realized that it's a type S3. So we will invoke this type of CSI, S3. And if we want to use it in a pod, it's simple as this. So in the labels, we have this convention. So we have the dataset dot a number and ID, which is the name of the dataset, Yanis, and the same to be use as mount. Now, this means that we instruct the framework that we want the pod, this dataset mounted inside the pod and not used as a config map, because in the cases that the user wants to access, let's say, only the S3 API directly and not mount it, you will see that they will change it to config map, right? So also we can specify the volume mounts like that. So we can say this, I want you to mount here. But if it's emitted, by definition, by convention, we mount on empty datasets Yanis. So if I go ahead and create this pod, okay, and let's go inside and see what happens. Okay, so MNT datasets. Here you go. This is my bucket. This is my dataset. And it's the raw data from the remote bucket on S3. So we envision that in that way, the users would find it, the non-experienced users with CSI or any of the low-level Kubernetes components would be able to launch their pods and their jobs in a much more easy way, and it would be much easier for them to onboard on Kubernetes. And yeah, we're heavily relying, of course, on the CSI interface, and because of the discussion about the object, cloud object API, if once this becomes more development ready, more production ready, we will plan to leverage as well. So this is a very rough idea of the framework, and I have presented on CNCF, SIG Storage group as well. And yeah, basically we're looking to reach out and get feedback and trying to understand what is the landscape and where does this work fit.
And just to make sure I understand, you can set the use as to mount or to something else?
Yeah, to config map, because there might,
okay.
because there might be cases that the user would want to use directly the S3 API. So we just inject the environment variables to reflect on the remote S3 URL, the bucket, and the username and password. So we're looking also to, there is another project that it's called Trusted Service Identity, which somehow makes it, it leverages Vault to keep the secrets there instead of having it as Kubernetes secrets. And we're looking ways to integrate with that so that the bucket credentials won't be stored in secrets or somewhere else. So only the users that create these pods can access this bucket.
And this, if you put use as mount, it uses CSI S3. I assume that's a fuse.
Exactly. Okay. So yeah, so basically there is a CSI S3 open source project that we took and then modified a bit because we wanted the functionality to be a pointer. So we didn't want, so in their case, when they were deleting PVC, they were deleting also the bucket, and we just wanted to tweak this a bit to support this functionality, that we want to keep the bucket there. We just want to delete the mount point, right? Mm-hmm. So by default, it uses S3FS, but we haven't experimented with other options, a bit with Goofies a while ago. But yeah, S3FS for us, for the time being, just does the trick. But yeah, the CSI S3, under the hood, they use S3FS. So yeah, the idea is just to offer one abstraction higher of that, of the CSI S3, right? So while it is possible to mount it, of course, we find it that for users who are not experienced with storage classes and provisioners and dynamic PVCs and all this stuff, maybe with this approach it would be easier for them to spin up a pod with using a data set that maybe it was provided also by someone else. So imagine the case that the actual data provider would be a different persona in our case.
That makes sense. And can you talk a little bit more about this optional caching layer and what does it do?
Yes. So basically I can show you the code, I think by showing a bit how does it look like. So so here on the plugins, I have this Chef-Cache plugin, and it's again, so the main orchestrator, it's again an operator, right? It's an operator that takes definitions of datasets, right? And in the end creates the PVCs. Now, what is happening is that the core operator working here, right? When they receive a definition of a dataset, they do a lookup on the cluster, right? So basically the cluster is just, in order to understand for us that it is a cluster, we have just these labels, right? So we have a pod that should be running that says DLF plugin caching and DLF plugin name Chef caching plugin, right? In the specific case. So basically what happens is that the main operator, once they see that there is a plugin running using these labels, it will say, you know what, I'm done with this data set, right? I won't process it anymore, right? I'll leave it I'll leave it to you. So the caching plugin is again an operator that reacts to the creation of data sets with a specific label. So basically, the initial operator says, okay, because I know that there is this plugin, I will assign this plugin. So basically, annotate the data set and says, you know what, now this data set is responsible. The caching plugin is responsible for handling this data set. So it doesn't do anything more when the data set is created, the main operator. Now, the caching plugin, in our case, we have modified a bit the Rados gateway of Ceph. So it is able to cache remote buckets into local Ceph storage. And for that, we used Rook to quickly provision the pods and so on. So basically, the caching plugin makes sure that it receives these details, right, and knows that it's responsible for creating a dataset internal. And what they do is that, they create the pods, they create the configuration, they create the secrets and whatever else is needed from their end. And in the end, they do a create dataset internal. So then it's when the core operator kicks in and says, oh, okay, there is a dataset internal, which originated from somewhere else, but not me, but still it's okay because it's of, it's of a type of storage that I understand, that I can speak. So basically it's an S3. So it will continue the flow, right? It will continue the flow to create the PVCs, the config maps, and the secrets by using the exact same code base that it would do in the case that it was just identical. So the dataset internal, in case it's one-to-one, it still will proceed the exact same fashion. The only thing that the caching plugin is responsible for is to react to creations of datasets and provide in the end dataset internal. So in the code of the caching plugin, they won't have to write details about S3FS, about storage classes or whatever. They have to just give back a dataset internal. And yeah, we were able to create a plugin fairly quickly with that approach.
And just to make sure I understand, basically what this caching layer does is if one exists, this caching plugin says, okay, let me go fetch that data set if it's a remote bucket and put it into a local disk effectively. And so in this case, Rook Ceph.
So yeah, in this case, if there is a plugin available, they need to expose somehow a different endpoint, right? It makes sense because they look up on the remote, right? And they want to expose a new address that exposes the cast version of it. Yeah, and it does it locally, right, on the local Kubernetes cluster. So we want to keep all that plumbing independent from the core framework and from the user, of course. So basically, the user will mount in the end the PVC, but they will mount it with these details, which means that they won't be hitting the remote. They would be hitting the one that the caching plugin has provided. Now, if the plugin internally, does prefetching or handles it in any other way, it's not part of the core framework, right? So we don't provide caching. We provide an interface for caching plugins to attach, but also we give an example implementation of, this is how we do it, right? We get a definition, we create a Rados gateway pod, we create a user. Once we get those details and it's up and running, we create a dataset internal, and then the core framework can take it from there. So this is we don't do caching, we just provide the caching and interfaces for the users not to modify, not to configure anything.
Got it. Cool. Thank you for all that information. I think there's definitely a lot of overlap with the Kazi project, the container storage projects. I'm glad that you're looking into that already and planning to kind of align with that as that becomes more mature. I think the only other piece of feedback I have here is to consider, if you look at Kazi and if you look at PVPVC and these other existing interfaces, snapshots, for example, what we try to do is make sure that the objects that we expose to the end users are portable across implementations. And it might be something that you want to look into for your data set object as well. But I'm not sure if that applies here necessarily. Just something to think about. Other than that, it looks really cool to me.
Okay.
Did anybody else have questions? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, thank you so much, Yanis. I took some notes in the agenda doc. If folks want to reference back to that, feel free. And Yanis, I look forward to working with you in the Kazi community as well.
Okay, Saad, so should I send an email to you?
Yeah, feel free.
Okay.
And we can sync up offline.
Okay,
we don't have
thanks very
time to get to the remaining items, so what we'll do is move the remaining items to the next meeting, and we'll reconvene in 2 weeks. Thank you, everyone, for your time, and take care.
Thanks.
Thank you.